The planet was cold, broken, and full of hungry souls. Cities had fallen, trade routes were gone, and the skies were filled with warships that never left. In the middle of this chaos, a little alien girl sat in the dust, her eyes empty, her belly empty, and her hope long gone. Her skin was a pale lavender, once bright, but now faded with hunger. Her arms were too thin for her frame, and her clothes hung off her like old rags. No one looked at her. No one cared. She was just one of many, lost children in a galaxy that had no space for the weak. But one man did stop. He was human tall, tired, and clearly not rich. His boots were covered in dust from walking too long, and his jacket was patched in more places than whole. His name was Ethan, a simple cargo pilot whose ship had broken down near this alien marketplace. He had come looking for fuel, but instead found something else. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She only stared at him with large, tired eyes. Ethan looked around. No one paid attention to her. Some even stepped over her as if she were trash. His heart sank. He reached into his bag and pulled out the only thing he had left, a wrapped protein bar, half crushed but still edible. He knelt in front of her and held it out without a word. The girl flinched at first, as if expecting him to hit her. When he didn't, her eyes filled with tears. She slowly reached out, touched the bar like it was a dream, and took it with both hands. She didn't say thank you. She didn't need to. The way she stared at it, like it was treasure, was enough. She took a small bite and chewed slowly, then another. Her hands trembled, and tears dropped onto her knees. Ethan just sat beside her on the ground. He didn't speak either. He didn't ask who she was or where her family had gone. Maybe he didn't want to know. Maybe he knew the answer already. They sat like that for a long time, just a hungry girl and a man who gave her his last food. As the sun began to set, the girl looked up at him. Her lips moved as if trying to say something, but no words came out. Ethan smiled gently and patted her shoulder. "It's okay," he said softly. "You don't need to say anything." She stared at him for a few seconds more, then stood up. She took one step back, then another. Then she turned and ran, her weak legs barely able to carry her. Ethan didn't follow. He just watched her go, hoping she found safety somewhere. That night, Ethan returned to his broken ship. His stomach was empty, and he had no fuel. But something in his heart felt full. He didn't know why. He just hoped the little girl survived. He never saw her again. Years passed. The war ended. The galaxy changed. Ethan left the cargo job and moved to a quiet farming moon, far from the noise of politics and war. Sometimes when he looked at the stars, he thought of her. That tiny, starving alien child with tears in her eyes and a bar of food in her shaking hands. He never knew her name. He didn't know where she went. But that memory stayed with him more than any mission or battle he ever faced. He told no one about her, not because it was a secret, but because it was something pure, something real, a moment that didn't need words. But somewhere across the stars, the girl remembered him. She remembered his face, his voice, his kindness. And now, after all these years, she was coming back. Not as a starving child, but as someone powerful. Someone changed. Someone who owed him everything. She returns. But not as a child anymore. The moon was quiet that night. Ethan had just finished watering the edge of his crops when a strange hum filled the sky. He looked up, expecting a passing trader ship, but what came down wasn't anything local. It was sleek, black, and shaped like a blade cutting through air. The ship hovered above his field for a moment, then slowly descended. Lights blinked from its hull, and symbols Ethan didn't recognize glowed softly across its surface. He froze, heart pounding. No ships ever came here. Not military. Not alien. Not this kind. The ship's ramp lowered with a hiss, and armored boots touched the soil. Out walked a woman tall, graceful, and glowing with quiet strength. Her armor shimmered in shades of silver and deep purple. Her long white hair flowed behind her like silk. Her face was sharp, noble, and marked with glowing lines that told of rank and power. Soldiers stepped behind her, but none dared walk ahead. She looked straight at Ethan. "You are Ethan, the human who once gave his last food to a starving girl," she said, voice calm and steady. "Do you remember me?" Ethan's breath caught. He stepped back without meaning to. His mind raced. That voice so familiar but deeper. That face no longer small and broken but strong and proud. He didn't know how, but he knew. It was her, the little girl from the market. She was no longer weak, no longer helpless. She had returned. Ethan didn't know what to say. He opened his mouth, but nothing came. She stepped closer and bowed her head slightly, a gesture of deep respect in her culture. "I came back," she said, "to repay my debt. My life is yours." Her words echoed across the empty field. The soldiers behind her bowed. Even the ship's engines quieted, like the universe had paused to listen. Ethan blinked. What? She raised her head and looked him in the eyes. "Among my people, when someone saves a life with no hope of reward, that life becomes theirs. You gave food without asking. You saved me when no one else cared. I was a child, yes, but I never forgot." Ethan still didn't move. It felt like a dream, a storm of memories breaking open. The starving girl, her tears, her silent goodbye, and now this warrior. She stepped aside and motioned to her soldiers. "They are yours as well if you wish. I command them, but only because of you." Ethan laughed, but it came out dry and nervous. "I'm just a farmer." "You were never just anything," she replied softly. He looked around as if someone might explain this to him, but no one did. The field was still. The stars watched in silence. He cleared his throat. "You never told me your name. I had no name when you met me," she said. "But now I'm called Commander Zari of the 7th House. But to you, I will be whoever you need." Ethan shook his head slowly. "I didn't ask for this." "I know," she said. "And that is why you deserve it." She took off her helmet and placed it at his feet, a symbol of full surrender. The soldiers bowed again, this time deeper. They were watching a sacred moment, a life debt fulfilled. Ethan didn't know what to feel. Grateful, confused, afraid? But one thing he knew for sure, this was just the beginning. Because wherever Zari had been all these years, she had come back not only as a survivor, but as someone powerful. And powerful beings always bring storms behind them. And someone, somewhere, was going to notice Asterisk for the first time in years. Ethan felt like he no longer owned his own life. It had been simple before: wake up, tend to the crops, fix the fence, sleep under the stars. But now, everywhere he turned, there were alien soldiers, patrolling his land, not invading, protecting, watching over him like he was a king, like he was sacred. And at the center of it all stood her Zari, once a starving girl in the dust, now a warrior commander with eyes sharp as blades and a voice that made trained soldiers freeze. But with Ethan, she was different. Her tone softened. Her armor loosened. She looked at him not as a ruler, not as a savior, but something far more personal. One morning, he found her kneeling in his garden, her hands in the dirt, helping with the harvest. No weapons, no guards, just her. "I want to understand the life you chose," she said quietly. "Because I'm offering mine to you." Ethan stared at her. "You don't need to do this." She looked up. "You don't understand what you did for me. You gave when you had nothing. You saw me when I was invisible. My people, they train for honor, but no training prepares us for kindness like that. That day, she made her vow official. Before sunset, Zari stood in front of her own troops. She declared her life debt to Ethan, witnessed by her second-in-command and her cultural elder. Then she did something no one expected. She knelt and removed her honor badge, a rare medallion given only to elite commanders of her kind. She placed it at Ethan's feet. I, Commander Zari of the 7th House, give myself in debt bond to Ethan. Of Earth, until my final breath, I am his to protect, to serve, and to honor. Gasps broke out across the formation. To Ethan, it felt like a strange dream. To Zari's people, it was history. Back on her homeworld, news spread fast. A powerful alien commander had bent the knee to a human farmer. Some called it beautiful. Others called it a disgrace, and some called it dangerous. That night, a messenger arrived with a sealed crystal. Zari scanned it and frowned. Ethan noticed her jaw tighten. "What is it?" he asked. "A warning," she said. "Not everyone believes your kindness should be rewarded. There are voices, powerful ones. They want the old ways to remain. No ties to humans. No debts to outsiders. They're afraid of change." Ethan folded his arms. "So I'm a threat now?" "To some," she said. "But you always were. You proved something they wanted hidden humans have honor, too." In the days that followed, more visitors came. Alien nobles, priests, generals, all came to see the human who had earned a warrior's loyalty through a single act of kindness. Some were curious, some were polite, some were not. One noble, tall, sharp, and cold, spoke directly to Ethan. "You are being watched, human. Not all gifts are blessings. You should tell her to release you." Ethan didn't even blink. "She's not a slave." The noble leaned in. "She may become one if you're not careful." Later that evening, Zari stood on the edge of the field, looking out into the stars. Ethan joined her. "You really don't have to do all this," he said softly. She turned to him. "No, I want to. You gave me something when I had nothing. I don't care what the council says. My life is yours not out of duty, but because it means something." Ethan stared at her, then at the sky. "I didn't mean to change your world," he said. Zari gave a faint smile. "You didn't just change mine. You shook it." But neither of them knew that far away on her homeworld, a secret group had just voted. A human had gained too much attention, and they weren't going to let that go unpunished. Asterisk enemies in the shadows, the sun rose over Ethan's fields like always. The crops danced in the breeze. Birds chirped from the nearby ridge. Everything looked normal, but it wasn't. Not anymore. Not since Zari arrived, and especially not since her people started whispering about the human who commands a warrior. The rumors had grown like wildfire. In markets across the stars, traders spoke of a human who held the heart and loyalty of one of the galaxy's fiercest commanders. On military stations, officers argued whether it was honor or something far more dangerous. In hidden places, older powers stirred ones who feared humans rising beyond their place. Zari noticed it before Ethan did. Her soldiers were more alert. Her ship's systems picked up odd energy trails. And twice she found trackers buried under soil near Ethan's home. She didn't tell him at first, not because she wanted to hide the truth, but because she wanted to delay the fear. But fear came anyway. One night, as Ethan walked to the barn, he felt its eyes watching him. Not the kind of gaze from a curious neighbor or a friend, but something cold, predatory. He turned fast, but the field was empty. Next morning, Zari stood by the door with a small charred device in her hand. "It exploded when one of my guards got close," she said quietly. "A proximity probe. Not meant to kill, but meant to test response time. Ethan rubbed his face. So someone's planning something, Zari nodded. They're testing your defenses, testing me. He stepped closer. But why now? Because the council doesn't believe you're harmless anymore. They think you're pulling my strings. They think your kindness was a trick, and some of them— She paused. Some of them fear what it means if humans and my kind stand side by side. That evening, a shadow passed through the sky. A courier drone dropped a sealed message. Inside, it was a single sentence. Return to your place or be returned to dust. Zari crushed it in her fist without a word. Ethan looked at her. That was for me, wasn't it? Yes. Then you need to leave, he said. No. You'll be hunted. I already am, she replied. I chose this, Ethan. I choose it again. That night, they sat outside under the stars. No words, just quiet understanding. But in the distance, a small drone hovered just beyond. The trees. A red light blinked out they were being watched again, and this time, the ones watching weren't just angry. They were preparing to strike. The next day, Zari summoned her top warriors. Not many, just 5, but each one could take down a room full of enemies. She gave them orders to strengthen the perimeter. She knew something Ethan didn't yet. The council had placed a bounty, not on Ethan's life, but on hers. And anyone who got to him could force her to surrender. Still, she didn't back down. Instead, she trained harder, slept less, and kept one hand near her weapon at all times. Ethan noticed the changes. She didn't smile as easily. Her eyes scanned every shadow. But when he asked if she was afraid, she only said one thing. I've died once before, Ethan, when I was that starving girl. You gave me life again, and now no one will take it from you. But far across the stars, a ship launched from a hidden moon. Silent, fast. Invisible to her scanners, it carried a squad with one mission, and that mission had Ethan's name written on it ***. The offer he refuses, the ship landed quietly, too quietly. No lights, no noise, just a low hum that made the animals restless and the wind feel colder than usual. Zari's guards were on alert instantly. But this wasn't an attack, not yet. A man stepped out. Tall, dressed in black robes, and wearing the insignia of the Outer Council. His face was calm, his voice even smoother. I come in peace, he said, holding up his hands. I only wish to speak with the human. Zari stepped forward, blocking his path. You'll speak with me first. But the man smiled, polite and practiced. I mean no offense, Commander Zari, but the Council believes your attachment clouds your judgment. I'm here to speak to Ethan alone. Ethan, who had been watching from the doorway, stepped forward. It's fine, he said. Let's hear him out. They walked toward the edge of the field, far from the guards, far from Zari's ears, though she never let him leave her sight. The man's tone changed the moment they were alone. You've caused quite a stir, human, a ripple in still waters. Your presence has shifted things we worked hard to keep balanced. Ethan raised an eyebrow. By doing what? Feeding a starving girl? The man gave a cold smile. You think it's just that? You saved a girl who was meant to die. You earned her loyalty. And now a commander bows before a farmer. That image spreads across systems. It gives the wrong kind of people hope. Ethan stared at him. So what do you want? The man stepped closer, voice dropping lower. We want you gone. He pulled out a crystal, placed it in Ethan's hand. Inside is enough currency to buy 10 planets, a new identity, a ship, a peaceful life far from here. All you have to do is leave. Disappear. Let Zari move on. Let the Council restore order. Ethan looked down at the crystal. It glowed softly, quietly, like a heartbeat made of gold. He didn't even think before. Tossing it onto the ground, the man flinched as it shattered. Ethan's voice was firm. I don't care about your money. I don't care about your order. She's not a tool. She's not yours to command. And I'm not running. The councilman's smile vanished. You'll regret this. Ethan took a step closer. No, you will. The man turned and walked away, cloak trailing behind him like a shadow. Zari met him halfway, her eyes locked on Ethan's. He didn't say a word, but she knew something had happened. That night, she sat beside him near the fire. They tried to buy you off, didn't they? He nodded. I would have understood if you left, she whispered. I wouldn't, he replied. The fire crackled, but the silence didn't last long. Hours later, the first strike came, a sudden pulse in the air, lights cutting through the sky, a blast at the edge of the fields. Zari's guards jumped into action. Ethan was pushed behind a barrier. The ground shook Dot, and just like that, the war had come home. Zari stood tall, eyes glowing, voice sharp with command. Her soldiers fought like shadows, striking fast and disappearing. Ethan watched from cover, heart racing not with fear, but fury. They had tried to buy his silence. Now they were trying to kill his loyalty. By morning, the attack had failed. The enemy retreated. But it was just a warning. Zari stood over one of the captured soldiers. Who sent you? She asked. He smiled with bloody teeth. You already know. She didn't flinch. She turned to Ethan. They won't stop. He looked her in the eyes. Neither will I. For the first time since she returned, Zari didn't see herself as a warrior repaying a debt. She saw herself as something more. A shield for the man who once fed her, and now stood ready to fight for her asterisk. Her final vow. They came in silence, cloaked, disciplined, merciless. The second wave didn't use threats or offers. It used blades and fire. And this time, they didn't come for Ethan. They came for Zari. It happened just before dawn. One of Zari's warriors screamed as a hidden drone pierced her armor. Another collapsed with a poisoned dart to the neck. Within moments, the perimeter was breached. The enemy had studied every weakness, every gap, every step Zari took. They didn't want a battle. They wanted her captured before she could fight back. Ethan woke to the sound of weapons clashing. When he ran outside, he saw the fields glowing red, some from fire, some from the blood of warriors. In the middle of the chaos stood Zari, her blade glowing, her armor cracked, her voice thundering. They had come to take her. They didn't realize she had nothing left to lose. One of the attackers shouted, "Drop your weapons, Commander. We have your human." Ethan had been seized, dragged by two masked soldiers. A blade pressed to his neck. Zari froze. And for a second, Ethan saw something terrifying in her eyes, not fear, but rage, deep, cold, controlled. She dropped her sword. Then she whispered something in her native tongue, a vow older than her title, older than her name. Her guards knew the words. They gasped. Some even stepped back. Ethan didn't understand the language, but he understood her eyes. She wasn't surrendering. She was transforming. Suddenly she moved, faster than anything Ethan had ever seen. One of the soldiers holding him collapsed with a crushed throat before he could scream. The other tried to stab, but Zari was already behind him. A snap, a fall. Ethan dropped to the dirt, breathing hard. Zari stood above him, blood dripping from her gauntlet, and then it began. Zari unleashed herself, not as a commander, not as a protector, but as a weapon. A storm of speed and precision. She moved like someone possessed. Her blade cut through the air, her kicks knocked bodies into the sky. The attackers couldn't keep up. They thought she would hold back because Ethan was near. They were wrong, because in that moment, Zari wasn't protecting a human out of debt. She was fighting for the one thing that had ever made her feel alive. By the time it ended, the field was still again. The enemy defeated or running, Her armor was cracked. Her hand was bleeding. But she didn't care. Ethan rose slowly. You could have been killed. Zari stared at the horizon. So could you. He stepped closer. I don't want your death. I never asked for this. She turned, eyes burning with emotion. And I never asked to live. But you gave that to me. So now I fight not because of what you did, but because of what you mean. Ethan was silent. She took off her broken helmet and dropped it beside his feet. I swore a debt, she said softly. But this is no longer about duty. She fell to her knees, not like before, not with formality, but raw, real. She looked up at him. This is my final vow. If they come again, they will have to burn this world to ashes before they lay a hand on you. He reached down, took her hand, and helped her to her feet. No more kneeling, he said. Not to me. And in that quiet moment, something shifted between them. Not power, not honor, but understanding. The kind that no war, no counsel, no threat could erase. She had closed her heart once to survive. Now she opened it. To protect. Asterisk, a new beginning. The field where they first stood together was different now. Scorched lines carved the earth. Shattered blades lay in the soil like forgotten stories. Smoke still curled from the edge of the trees. But in the middle of it all stood Zari and Ethan side by side, silent and unbroken. The enemy had fled. Not because they were defeated in strength, but because they were defeated in spirit. They came believing they could bend Zari or scare the human she protected. Instead, they saw something terrifying: loyalty that couldn't be bought, and a bond no threat could undo. Zar, I received a message soon after. It came from the very council that once tried to destroy her. They offered her a throne. After the failures of the assassins, after public support swelled around her, the council decided to save face. They named her Defender of the Seventh House, offered her command over 100 fleets and a palace carved from starlight. Everything she once dreamed of, and she said no. Zar, I turned to Ethan that night. Sitting under the stars again, like so many nights before, her armor was off. Her long white hair rested on her shoulder. There was no tension in her voice, only peace. They offered me everything, she said softly. Ethan looked over. And? She smiled gently. I already have everything. He chuckled. You sure? Could have had a throne. I have something better, she said. I have a home. And someone worth protecting who never asked me to. In the following weeks, Zari's ship was disassembled and rebuilt into a new kind of home, half tech, half earth, growing gardens between metal walls. Her soldiers chose to stay, becoming part of the village, learning to plant, to build, to live. Children from nearby colonies came to hear the story of the warrior who kneeled to a farmer. Some believed it. Some didn't. But all were amazed, and as for Ethan, he never saw himself as a hero. He still woke early, still tended his crops. But now, when he looked out over the land, he wasn't alone. Zari walked beside him. Sometimes in armor, sometimes barefoot in the dirt. One evening, she asked him quietly, Do you regret it? Giving me that food? Ethan didn't hesitate. No, she took his hand. That small kindness changed the stars. And it had, because kindness, once planted, grows roots deeper than war. And love, unexpected, unspoken, unforced, can become the most powerful vow of all. The little alien girl who once wept in the dust had become a legend. But to Ethan, she was still the girl who never needed to speak, to be heard, and together they stepped into a new story, not of survival, but of home.